The stock market flips on its outside trading. The Democrats block a bill that they helped to write. Illinois issues a lockdown. And Biden and Sanders are both missing from their responsibilities. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Oh, Jesus. The weekend. Under the COVID 19 crisis, the weekends are going to be the worst. And that's, I think, what we're going to start to see for quite a while. But my faith in humanity might be restored based on what I started to see over the weekend as I was reading news and interacting with people, because I have one of those jobs that they consider to be crucial, so I do get to go to my regular big boy 40-hour-a-week job every day, except for Monday because I take that off to do Ed's World. But before we get started with talking about stocks, head on over to freedomscoop.com where you can go and check out all of the content from all of our great creators over there. You can check out The Generational Gap. You can check out Stephen Ignoramus. He's over there. You can check out The R-Rated Conservative. You can check out Wyatt Birkenhoff, who will be joining us on Ed's World next week. I just confirmed that with him, so go and check that out over there. I wrote a nice letter to Nancy Pelosi over the weekend, and you can go and read that. That should still be top story at this point, except once you're on the audio platforms, this will take over as top story, but you can go and check that out over there and check out all the things that we have going on and getting ready to show up for the coming weeks. It's going to be a great time. We're making improvements every day, so go over there and check us out. So, before we get started here, let's talk about the stocks. So, this is from Investors Business Daily. Dow Jones futures today up. Fed stimulus Senate impasse. New York, California lockdown. New York Stock Exchange floor closes. This is from Alan R. Elliott. And before I start reading, the interesting thing that we see when we're looking at the stock market is just an hour ago, CNN put out a similar story on the other direction, stating that the futures were going to fall. So nobody really knows what's going on, especially once we start to see what's going on with the government, because a lot of people are waiting on that stimulus from the government. And we'll talk about it a bit later, but it got blocked overnight last night, and I guess McConnell and Schumer sat up all night trying to work things out. I don't know if they've come to an agreement. I don't know what's going to be in the new bill, but we will find out at noon Eastern today. So let's see what Mr. Elliott has to say. Stock futures turned higher Monday after the Federal Reserve announced new measures aimed at propping financial markets. Futures had dived to limit down lows Sunday night on gridlocked Senate stimulus package. New York and Los Angeles begin their first week under stay-at-home orders. Coronavirus stocks Moderna, Gilead Sciences, and BioNTech notched early gains. Boeing led the whiplash turn in trading on the Dow Jones today as Dow Jones futures swung 1.6% higher. S&P 500 futures hammered out a 1.7% advance, and NASDAQ futures bounced more than 2% above fair value on the stock market today. Bonds turned sharply higher following the Fed announcement, trimming 10 basis points from the 10-year yield to 0.75%. Oil prices staged a quick reverse, with West Texas Intermediate popping out a 2% decline and trading 3.8% higher to $23.50 a barrel. So, I did some driving last night, and when I came home, when I left the little town I live in, gas was $1.68 for regular at the gas station that I normally go to. And in the 6 hours I was gone, when I got back, it was down to $1.48. So I'm going to finish out this show, I'm going to eat breakfast, and I'm going to go fill up my truck, because that is the lowest I've ever seen gas once you adjust for inflation. And with a 33-gallon tank, I am going to take full advantage of that as well. So that's going to be happening here. I've got some gas in there, but I bet you I go over there and fill up where I at for under $30. So that's incredible. I've never seen that once you adjust for inflation, because, when I started driving it was $1.78, and that was, 20 years ago. So yeah, I'm fairly excited to go do that, and I'm fairly excited to see what the stock market does today. It could go any direction. There's no way of predicting anymore at this point until people start getting out, getting back to work, and having places to spend their money. There's no way of predicting any of this. So But CNN Business had much worse and much more dire news to say, but this was at 6:26 a.m. Eastern Time. Global markets plunge as U.S. coronavirus relief bill stalls and cities worldwide lock down. This is from Claire Duffy, Laura He, and Charles Riley over at CNN Business. Global stocks and U.S. futures plunged again on Monday as governments worldwide locked down their cities and the United States stalls on a massive stimulus package meant to help Americans handle the coronavirus pandemic. Dow futures fell more than 900 points at one point, hitting a 5% decline that triggered a maximum allowable limit or limit down. That prevented futures from falling further. They were last down around 800 points or 4%. S&P 500 and Nasdaq futures also fell as much as 5% and were last down 3.8 and 3.1% respectively. Stocks in Asia and Europe posted more dramatic declines. Markets in Australia and South Korea's dropped more than 5%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was down 4.9%, while China's Shanghai Composite shed 3.1%. London's FTSE 100 fell 4.4% in early trading. Germany's DAX and France's CAC 40 also declined over 4%. There are now more than 339,000 coronavirus cases worldwide, forcing further travel restrictions, shutdowns, and disruptions for business. New measures to combat the virus have been imposed in Australia, New Zealand, and India, and the United Kingdom is considering whether action is needed. After pubs and restaurants were told to close on Friday, but large numbers of people continued to gather in public spaces. So that was interesting to me. I actually made a commentary to that, to something else that somebody had said earlier today, because it was Piers Morgan had posted on Twitter that there was not enough being done to prevent people from gathering, and Boris Johnson was failing because there wasn't enough being done there. And I never got a response out of Morgan, which I wouldn't expect that I would have, but I did ask the question to Piers whether or not he would be satisfied if Boris Johnson were to set an army of people out in dress uniform to walk the streets in a lockstep, goose-step fashion and enforce the laws and the lockdowns that direction. I don't know if that would make Morgan happy. I certainly wouldn't want to see anything like that. And I know that there are some politicians on a local level that are discussing doing something like that right now. But, I mean, is that the authoritarian crackdown that some of these people want? They seem to rail against it every chance they can, and yet they seem to beg for it when it comes to a time of crisis. So, and one more article from Investors Business Daily. Once the RAM in my computer decides it wants to catch up. Dow Jones futures surge on Fed news after hitting a limit down overnight as U.S. coronavirus cases top 35,000. This is from Scott Letonin over at Investors Business Daily, and this is from 7:55 a.m. Eastern Time. Dow Jones futures surged higher in Monday morning's pre-market trading session, along with S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq futures on Fed news after triggering the limit down rule Sunday night after Congress failed to reach a deal on $2 trillion stimulus package. The Federal Reserve announced new quantitative easing measures. Global coronavirus cases surged past 343,000, while U.S. cases topped 35,000, with nearly 17,000 in New York State alone. As the coronavirus stock market correction crash continues, Dow Jones stock Apple is set to jump about 1% early Monday. Top stocks to watch in the current coronavirus stock market correction include Alibaba, Amazon, and Nvidia. Key earnings results this week include Dow Jones stock Nike, Lululemon, and Micron Technology. So people are staying home, they're exercising, they're watching all their Netflix, and they're doing yoga, is what I'm taking out of this. So those would be smart stocks to buy. Telecommunications would be as well, except unless, of course, you get called corrupt over doing that. You notice how fast that news story fell out of the news? You notice how fast they stopped talking about that once they realized they might be discovered for all of them doing it as well, because I guarantee it was more than the 5 that got caught. That story disappeared in a hell of a hurry. And more of this is numbers that we already read. So let's talk about the virus itself and the stimulus package that was supposed to do a large amount of the rallying as we went along. So last night I was informed that I just got home. I take a news blackout every Sunday. It wasn't as long as I'd liked it to be this time, but I take a news blackout every Sunday, and I was informed once I got home, that Senate Democrats decided that they were going to block the bill that they helped to write, hence the title of this episode. And I couldn't believe it, and I read more, and certainly enough, this was happening. And I knew that the mainstream medias were trying to call this the stimulus package that was going to put cash in your hands and not necessarily go out to go and buy more stocks. That was supposed to, and I've read the bill. The package that was supposed to put cash directly in your hands was being called a slush fund for the rich, and it wasn't going to affect anybody who made under $50,000. I actually saw both of those claims yesterday, earlier on in the day. But no, the Democrats came together with the leadership of Schumer in the Senate and they built this bill. They put some of their pet projects in, but they made sure that this was going to pass and pass without the filibuster. So they got through, they got it done, and late last night, Schumer decided that he was going to block the vote for the bill. And apparently the Democrats got in lockstep for it. So let's see what CNN Politics has to say first. This is from Phil Mattingly. Pelosi says no deal yet on stimulus package as McConnell says leaders are very close. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi sounded an ominous warning Sunday that she may not support an emerging coronavirus stimulus bill that had been on fast track through Congress this weekend that has grown to roughly $2 trillion. Why? Anyway, according to two people directly involved in the talks. Departing a meeting with the top four congressional leaders and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, Pelosi said there is no deal yet and that the House will introduce its own bill, something that could significantly draw out the process to finalize legislation. The fate of a final proposal, and quite possibly the American economy, is in the hands of the four congressional leaders, all of whom gathered in Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's office on Sunday. The Senate is expected to take a procedural vote to move forward on the package later in the afternoon, and a final vote to pass any agreement is set for Monday. McConnell struck an optimistic tone in a news conference after the meeting, despite the fact that no bipartisan deal has been reached yet. He says that negotiators are very close and that he is confident that they will get up to yes. McConnell insisted that the vote on final passage is still happening on Monday, saying, "Make no mistake about it, we will be voting tomorrow." I mean, the wheel has to stop at some point, and I don't want any of you to buy the notion that this isn't a thoroughly bipartisan proposal already, McConnell added. Pelosi sounded a different message on her way into that critical meeting. "From my standpoint, we're apart," Pelosi told reporters in the Capitol when asked if she expected a deal Sunday. The Senate did consider input from Pelosi and House committees who worked through Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer to provide it. So, I proposed yesterday, while I was still watching the news and figuring out what was going on with this, of course. There have been a lot of proposals, and Sticks has proposed that this is the Democrats not wanting the Republicans to get credit for anything, which I definitely believe is the case. This is them trying to get out in front of something that could lose them the election, which is definitely the case at this point, especially given the two candidates that lead the top of the ticket right now. But what you have to consider when you look at all of this, when you see what's going on here, is this is the stimulus package, or not stimulus package, this is the government shutdown 2.0. This is the government shutdown on steroids, and Nancy Pelosi has at this point realized that she can sit back and legitimately starve the American people to death. And it's more than just people who have decided to go and volunteer to work for the government. The federal employees who are non-essential that were furloughed over the government shutdown because the two parties couldn't come together because Nancy would never let McConnell and Trump get a win on anything. This is that on steroids. because now she can starve large swaths of furloughed Americans whose unemployment is going to run out at some point. And they are continually telling people to stay home. They're continually telling people that they shouldn't go to work, that they shouldn't go out, they shouldn't buy things, they should slow the economy and grind it to a dead halt as fast as they can. That's what the leadership in the Congress is telling these people. That is exactly what they're telling the people. And then they're holding back the money that was earmarked for them to try and get them through this long furlough. And this is on top of the fact, I mean, there are executive orders out there, which I disagree with as well because it's all private industry, that are pushing back evictions and foreclosure, that are pushing back bills because people can't afford to pay them because they're not going to work. Which is further grinding the economy to a halt because if they can't spend the money on their bills and they can't spend the money on themselves, all the $1,200 that they can get out of the government is worthless. Yeah, your grocery stores are going to benefit from it, but anything else is worthless at this point. Netflix is going to soar, Nvidia, your computer makers are going to soar, but for the most part, yeah. Without a place to spend your money, what good is the economy? And that's what we need to be fixing right here. I'll talk a bit about that later. I had an article that Jake from Freedom Scoop, or formerly from Freedom Scoop, I have to remind myself that that's formerly from Freedom Scoop at this point. But my friend Jake actually made a point in a Discord server when we were talking about this, and he pointed out that the response to COVID-19 may actually be worse than COVID-19 itself. I can't unfortunately cite the article because I use an ad blocker and I'm not going to change that, so screw you, Daily Mail. You're not going to get the view and you're not going to get your article read on the air, but yeah. We'll talk a bit about what Jake had to say about that. Let's see what else, because CNN had another article about this. This is from later on in the night. Senate GOP ramps up pressure on Democrats with Monday morning vote. This is from Bill Mattingly and Claire Ferran and Ted Barnett over at CNN. Hours after Senate Democrats blocked movement on a massive stimulus package Sunday evening, injecting fresh uncertainty over whether and when lawmakers will reach a bipartisan deal to deliver relief amid the devastating coronavirus pandemic, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell ramped up the pressure on Democrats. Taking to the Senate floor late Sunday night, he announced another procedural vote on the package timed for 9:45 Monday morning, minutes after the stock market opened, which we are, given the fact they're in Eastern time, we are past that at that point, but the last I knew they were pushing it back to noon now. As coronavirus hits the Senate with one senator now diagnosed and several others self-quarantining, tensions are running high up on Capitol Hill. While Republicans are urging quick action, Democrats argue that Republicans are prioritizing corporate industry over American workers in the legislation. No, I've read the bill, and that is not what's in there at all. Read the bill. I will find a link to that again, because I found it before. I'll find a link to that, and I'll post it in my Discord. If you're not on my Discord, it is linked in the description on all the platforms except for Twitch, unfortunately. I need to get that fixed, but everywhere else it is linked in the description below, so you can go and check that out. Or if you're on Facebook, it's actually above you. Go and check that out. I put a lot of articles in there, and a lot of the articles that I read are actually in a channel, so you can go ahead and check that out as well. During his remarks Sunday night, McConnell criticized his Democratic colleagues, saying if they did not reverse course tomorrow, the vote they cast on Sunday not to move the bill forward would cause more Americans to lose their jobs and savings. Democrats have argued the Republican proposal is weighted too heavily towards corporate America. The Democrats registered their frustration with the package earlier in the day. They helped write the legislation. That's what I don't get. They helped author all of this, and then they blocked it by lining up against a key procedural vote to advance it. The vote was 47-47. Lawmakers needed to clear a 60-vote threshold to succeed. The vote, originally set for 3 p.m. Eastern Time, was delayed until 6 p.m. as Democrats dug in against it and to allow more time for negotiations. A final bipartisan deal to respond to the toll of the spread of coronavirus has not been reached, but talks are expected to continue into Sunday evening. I don't know. I don't. I really don't. This is like AOC level of stupid what they're doing here. AOC level of stupid to get this done and like this. I don't know. Like I said, this is evil to me at this point. If they just do a clean stimulus bill, throw the money at the American people, and fight over your quibbles and your arguments elsewhere. I wrote a letter. I mentioned it at the beginning. It's on freedomscoop.com. I wrote a letter to Nancy Pelosi. And I said that, I said exactly that. Let this one go through. And then make another bill to put your little pet projects in. Just let this one go through so the American people can go and eat. And like I said, I intend to throw my money back at the government because I don't want it. But there are people that actually do need this. And that's all they're doing is just sitting here and blocking it. So, meanwhile, one of the questions that came out was, how do we pay for all of this? And Rashida Tlaib may have come up with a stupid answer, but an answer nonetheless. This is from Washington Examiner author Joseph Lawler. Tlaib proposes minting two $1 trillion platinum coins to finance monthly coronavirus debit cards. Representative Rashida Tlaib proposed sending everyone in the United States $2,000 immediately, and then $1,000 per month to counter the economic fallout of the coronavirus pandemic. The Michigan Democrats, once you get people on a government plan, it's really hard to get them off of it. So that's something that you have to keep in mind, especially with the interests that are going along with this. The Michigan Democrats' plan would be financed by having the Federal Reserve create new money on behalf of the Treasury to skirt the federal debt limit. The U.S. Mint would create two $1 trillion coins, and the Treasury would deposit them in its account in the Fed. Tlaib, a member of the small group of left-wing freshman House Democrats known as the Squad, described the plan as a truly universal relief proposal. Under Tlaib's proposal, everyone in the U.S., including illegal immigrants, would receive a $2,000 debit card immediately, either through the mail or by having a dedicated government corps seek them out. Families would receive that amount for each family member. The card would then be refilled with $1,000 monthly until 1 year after the end of the crisis. The plan goes far beyond the measures. You get them hooked on government welfare, and then they can't get off. The plan goes far beyond the measures proposed by Senate Republicans as part of a stimulus package. Their initial plan featured a one-time $1,200 check for adults earning below a certain income level. Tlaib's proposal is more in line with that of House Financial Services Committee Chairwoman Maxine Waters, a California Democrat. The broad shutdown of business to prevent the spread of the virus has prompted governments to embrace unprecedented emergency measures and massive relief programs. On Friday, for instance, the UK's Chancellor of the Exchequer, I have no idea what that is, said that the government would cover 80% of the wages of workers sidelined by the crisis. More government. More government. Because, my God, they can't screw anything else up. Let's see. So this came from Ron Helton over in the Discord server. And this goes along the lines of something that I have pointed out, that you can't take these checks without expecting that there are going to be strings attached to them. So this is from CNBC, from Lori Konish. Here's how your coronavirus rescue check from the government could be taxed. Many Americans may soon get checks in their hands from the government, but Uncle Sam could also claw back some of that money. Information about how much those checks will be and whether or not individuals will pay tax on them will likely be hammered out in a deal by politicians very soon. On Thursday, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell unveiled a bill that proposes giving $1,200 to individuals, $2,400 to married couples, and $500 per child. These checks would start to phase out for individuals who had $75,000 or more in adjusted gross income, or $150,000 for married couples who filed jointly according to the 2018 tax return. The proposal currently calls for giving that money as a credit against your taxes. So this wouldn't be taxable because it's your own money back, essentially, said Jeffrey Levine, Director of Advanced Planning at Buckingham Strategic Wealth in Long Island, New York. There are three parts to determine what you would receive according to McConnell's proposal. If your individual tax liability is between $600 and $1,200, you would get back the amount of your tax liability. If it's below $600, you would get $600, and if it was more than $1,200, it would be capped at $1,200. These amounts would be double for married couples. Keep in mind that the proposal has not been finalized and is subject to change as lawmakers negotiate. The amounts McConnell is proposing are different from those discussed by Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. On Thursday, Mnuchin confirmed that the Trump administration wants to send out $1,000 to every American adult and $500 to every child. They could do whatever they want at this point, Levine said. They could just say, here's $1,200. It's tax-free to everybody, he added, or they could make it taxable income. There are a few potential scenarios for how tax money may or may not be applied to any checks you receive. The government could make it so that the cash payment may have to be repaid on that year's tax return, which was what I was pointing out, said Margie Dunn, an enrolled agent at Compass Tax and Financial Services in Monterey, California. For example, if you're single and you receive a check for $1,000 now, next year, if you're supposed to get a refund for $3,000, the government would deduct that $1,000 and give you the net difference of $2,000 as your 2020 refund, Dunn said. Alternatively, the government could consider the checks a gift, which would likely mean it would be considered taxable income, Dunn said. People would have to pay levies on the money based on their particular tax bracket. The people who are making $50,000 to $150,000 normally, those are the ones that are really going to feel the pinch if they have to pay taxes on it, Dunn said. If given a choice between an advance on 2020 taxes or paying tax on it, Dunn said she would prefer having the money taxed. That's because low-income taxpayers would benefit more. If it is a rebate, you would likely have to repay the money no matter what, she said. The last alternative is that the money could be tax-free. Experts disagree on whether or not this is feasible. Generally, I would think that there would be no tax implication if the government provides the payments in the form of a federal tax lien, said Barry Picker, a certified public accountant and certified financial planner at Picker and Auerbach in Cedarhurst, New York. My guess is that it would not be taxable, at least to the lower income individuals that the money is targeting, said Thomas Newhoff, tax supervisor at Henry Peters PC, with offices in Tyler and Longview, Texas. So, yeah, absolutely. And I said, you don't get anything out of the government without there being strings attached, no matter what. And I don't know if they've decided what they're going to do about this. I'm sure they're going to have to look at their numbers and run their numbers and figure out what that's going to do and what it's going to cost them. Either it's going to be inflation or they're going to tax the fuck out of you to do it. So that is something that we do need to keep in mind. Bernie Sanders had his own plan of this, and according to Fox News, it could cost more than $10 trillion because who doesn't love to spend other people's money more than Bernie Sanders? This is from Adam Shaw. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders' plan to help Americans through the economic crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic could cost more than $10 trillion depending on how long the crisis lasts. We need to send emergency cash payments of $2,000 to every person in America each month for the duration of this pandemic, he tweeted on Saturday. This is a sizable outbid of what is being currently considered in the Senate, which is understood to be $1,200 per adult and $500 per child. The money would not be given to those earning more than $100,000 and phased out for income levels below that. Sanders' plan, however, gives no indication of being any less for children or any other excluding factor. He has previously tagged the price of his plan overall, which includes other benefits, such as expanded health care, access, and unemployment assistance, at being approximately $2 trillion. Which, given the fact that for $1,200 for each American, we're already at $2 trillion. That is bullshit. But with more than 300 million Americans, that would mean, in theory, mean an outlay of 600 billion every month the crisis goes on. While some politicians have said the crisis might last just a few months, other predictions have been more dire. Yeah, our economy is going to push forward before that. I hate to tell you. We're a nation of entrepreneurs, and even if you force us to stay home, we will find another way to make money. A federal government plan to combat the coronavirus obtained by the New York Times warned that the pandemic will last 18 months or longer. If that were the case, the costs on just part of the plan would cost more than $10 trillion. And that is only one aspect of what Sanders wants to do to restart the economy after the crisis on Friday. He said that Medicare should cover all health expenses tied to the pandemic. And then forever! I mean, Bernie is he's so obvious on this. He's like any other authoritarian out there, and even some of the ones that we have in the government now. He's looking at a crisis like this, and he's trying to find a way to make the government more powerful so people are reluctant to give it back. Give back their safety nets once all of this is over. Get them hooked on the government, and of course he's using it to advance his pet projects. Medicare for all, and free money for everybody, and free college for everybody, and free everything for everybody. So, you knew he was going to do it. You absolutely did. And there are measures in place, of course, once again, to try and keep things going up here without blowing out our budget completely, which seems to be what he wants to do. So, just want to give an update on what we have for cases here. So, I'm on the Google front page right now looking up coronavirus. Excuse me. They've got a nice little chart here that we can talk about. So, I don't think that this is right statistically, because the numbers don't match on the United States side unless this is propaganda that they're trying to put out. But right now we're sitting at worldwide 349,807 cases, 100,345 recovered, 15,307 deaths. So the death toll is high, but I wouldn't call this grind the economy to a halt high yet. We could get there. We absolutely could, and once again, we'll talk about what Jake had to say a little bit later on here. United States, we are confirmed at 35,418 cases, 175 recovered, 473 deaths. China is claiming, of course, that they only have 81,000 cases, 72,000 recovered, and 3,270 deaths. I still think that's bullshit, but we'll see what happens there. Italy has got a slightly higher death toll at this point. Spain has a slightly higher death toll. And yeah, this is mild, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. So, in addition to California locking down, which we will talk about on Ed's World later, and we talked a bit about on Contemporary on Friday. Now, Illinois has joined the fray in locking down their state. This is from MSN.com. From Dan Petraea, Gregory Pratt, Stacey St. Clair, and Jamie Monks out of the Chicago Tribune. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker issued a stay-at-home order for the entire state starting Saturday at 5 p.m. through April 7th. Residents can still go to the grocery stores, put gas in their cars, take walks outside, and make pharmacy runs, the governor said at a Friday afternoon news conference. All local roads, including the interstate highways and tollways, will remain open to traffic as well. Yes, you have one of the biggest corridors in the world running through your state, and you make millions off of it a year. I would not shut that down either, even if it's just for people passing through at this point. If they can go around your state, take a couple extra days and not pay your tolls, that is going to cripple your economy faster than grinding your industry to a halt. For the vast majority of you already taking precautions, your lives will not change very much, Pritzker said. Still, he urged patience in the fast-evolving health crisis. We don't know yet all the steps we're going to have to take to get the virus under control, said Pritzker, who added that the state would rise to this occasion. Suburban Oak Park also issued a shelter-in-place order as of 12:01 a.m. on Friday, after 2 emergency room physicians at Rush Oak Park Hospital tested positive for COVID-19. Residents have been ordered to stay in their homes except for essential travel as outlined by a village ordinance. They can go to work, for example, if their businesses remain open, especially if they have essential jobs such as first responders, sanitation workers, or healthcare providers. So, yep, Illinois is locked down. I know that they talked about using the National Guard to enforce it, but yeah, they are locked down at this point. Can't go anywhere, can't do anything, and just sit at home and watch the Netflix unless you happen to be a nurse or something. So, let's see how that carries on. And before I get into this, I think this is the time to talk about the anecdote before we talk about Biden and Sanders here. So, Daily Mail will not allow you to look at their website with an ad blocker in place. So, they won't let you look at it if you're using incognito mode either, actually. So, I looked at an article, and Jake, the former owner of Freedom Scoop, had pointed out the fact that the measures used to stop the coronavirus may actually cause a higher death toll than the coronavirus. And that's one of the things that they're talking about, is that people will die being locked in their homes, being starving to death, and various other things. And I understand that that is actually the problem, because once people get out of this lockdown, they're going to have to go out and either find a new job, go back and restart their own job. But I mean, restarting industry is going to take time. It takes a lot of time to restart industry as once it's ground to a complete stop. And that does seem to be the place that they're trying to get us, is grinding to a complete stop. I know that they're trying to throw out these stimulus packages, which are going to cost us huge money, and they're going to cost people money down the road. Whether they tax them or they don't tax them, the inflation or the taxes are going to cost them money down the road. What if we grind industry to a halt and more people starve to death at this point than die from the respiratory complications of COVID-19? That is definitely something you have to think about as we move along and as we do this. You can grind industry to a halt. You can keep people from being able to make food, deliver food, make the essential products that we need, make medicines. And I know that most of these industries are not supposed to be affected by this, but people will also need the money to go out and pay for their prescriptions. They'll need to go and get back on healthcare systems, whether it's the failed healthcare.gov or a new healthcare system that runs through their company. If companies have to go and make amends and get people onto healthcare immediately rather than giving them a waiting period, that's going to cost them money too, especially if you do have to cycle a few employees in and out as you're restarting again. And what about the businesses that don't come back? The jobs that are lost over there? If the cure is worse than the disease and kills more people than the disease does, was it really a cure? That's something we need to think about as we're deciding what to do about these. And as states are locking down and only allowing the essential people to go to work for them, that is a lot more that you need to think about as we move this forward. So, moving back on over to Joe Biden here. This is from Slate. Just give an idea of what we're talking about here. I've been watching on Twitter as people have complained about what's going on in the government. And one of the things that I've continually seen as we go along, of course, is the fact that nobody seems to know where Joe Biden is. He hasn't made an appearance since the debate. He made one teleconference after that, which was very poorly done. And that's the only appearance anybody's seen out of him there. And people, especially Bernie Bros over on Twitter, have tried to call him out on this. This is from Slate.com. Ben Mathis Lilly contributes. Joe Biden's first major event since his March 15th debate with Bernie Sanders is set for Monday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, when he will discuss the coronavirus crisis from a studio that's been set up in his Delaware home. His reclusiveness in recent days has become news in itself. His only real or virtual public appearance last week during the most alarming series of events to transpire in America for at least 19 years were a 5-minute speech about Tuesday's primary elections and a Friday conference call with reporters. At the end of the call, he apologetically said his campaign was just on the verge of getting digital streaming figured out. They tell me there's ways that which we can do teleconferencing by us all being in different locations, he said, in a way that did not quite convey steely confidence and managerial focus, adding, "We've hired a professional team to do that now, and if you excuse the expression, it's a little above my pay grade on how to do that. And Corn Pop is going to be the one that's figuring all this out, and he's going to be holding the straight razor to all the people that won't get on board and won't get to it." Okay, maybe he didn't say that last part. Bernie Sanders, despite being older than Biden, having a full-time job in the Senate, has already been holding regular events online. Biden's absence has been noted by his critics on the left liberal sphere, who are asking what exactly the point is of having a nominee whose main selling point is a steady, affable public persona if he's not going to be appearing in public when stability and morale are running low. His disappearance, it's said, has allowed Donald Trump to dominate the crisis narrative and somehow possibly put himself in a position to win an election by belatedly semi-fixing a problem he created himself. So there's a lot wrong with what Slate says on this here, and we need to discuss what's wrong with what it is that they're saying here. There's a lot wrong with this. So first off, once you have Cuomo, Newsom, and Ilhan Omar all praising the president, he's doing something right. I hate to tell you this. And he is doing a lot right with this. This stimulus package was his idea. That's part of the reason I'm pretty sure that Pelosi came in and made sure they got blocked out, was because it was, for the most part, the president's idea to put money into the hands of people so they can pick themselves up whether or not they have a place to spend it, is the closest thing to a good thing we can do in a situation like this. Furthermore, Joe Biden does not hold an elected office. A lot of people were really mad when I pointed that out, but Joe Biden does not hold an elected office. Therefore, there is literally nothing he can do from where he's sitting right now. Bernie Sanders can make legislation that Senate Republicans will shoot down. President Trump can sign any legislation that gets to his desk. Those two men are in a position to do something. Whether we like what they're doing or not, they're actually in a position where they can do something. I don't understand what it is that these people, especially the Bernie bros that are calling him out, are expecting Joe Biden to do, given the fact that he doesn't hold an elected position. Yes, he can go ahead and he can make a great big speech, and we can hear all about his hairy legs and the roaches and kids jumping in his laps and Corn Pop and the good old days when people fought with a straight razor and their hearts were pumping. And he can give all kinds of speeches like that, but he can't do anything. He has no pull in the world anymore. He can suggest that people do stuff, but he has no pull and he has no teeth to do that. Meanwhile, while Trump is doing a very good job of this, of course, his critics in the media are going to tear him down, and everybody knows that. So Trump can go out and make public appearances and possibly get a gaffe out there of himself. Bernie Sanders can screech about spending other people's money and giving away free stuff and further alienate Central Union Democrat voters. Both of these men can do both of that. And while they're in the public eye, they can tear themselves down. Joe Biden cannot do anything. And being quiet and letting his enemies go back and fight with each other and tear each other down seems like a really, really good strategy for somebody who does want to win the presidency and somebody that the DNC wants to win the presidency. If I was the DNC, I would have welded the guy into his house and cut his hardline to the internet at that point. Simply because if he makes a public appearance right now, he can only hurt himself. And we are seeing, as much as people are praising what Trump is doing, he always has the chance to hurt himself in a crisis like this. And Bernie Sanders is definitely hurting himself. So that's, yeah, absolutely. Joe Biden is doing the best thing he can right now. And I'm sure, especially given the fact that he makes so many gaffes, I'm sure that the Bernie bros are hoping that he comes out and he gaffes and he does something. And that's why they're trying to goad him out. But he is in the best place that he can be right now. So, speaking of Bernie Sanders, this is from Fox News. Morgan Phillips writes, Bernie Sanders skips Senate procedural vote, talks with squad members on livestream instead. Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, missed a crucial Senate vote Sunday to hold a live stream from his home in Burlington with squad members Reps. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar. The Senate vote was to consider a $1.4 trillion Phase 3 stimulus package meant to help businesses devastated by the downturn under the coronavirus outbreak. During the live stream, Sanders blasted the package proposed by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky. It is hard for me to believe that in the midst of this terrible crisis, we have a Senate Republican bill that would give Trump administration a blank check to hand out corporate welfare. It's not corporate welfare, you dumb bastard. To virtually any corporation in America, without conditions as to how they can protect workers in the country. The Senate has failed to move forward with the package amid strong opposition from Democrats. Meanwhile, many Democrats complained that the draft aid package did not go far enough to provide health care and unemployment aid for Americans, and failed to put a restraint on a proposed $500 billion slush fund for corporations. The Democrats said that the ban on corporate buybacks was weak and limits on executive pay would last only 2 years. So, you're trying to mount an economic revolution in a country where we are in a position to rebuild the economy just as fast as it tumbled. And of course, why go to the top if you're not going to earn money? So limits on executive pay, that's why shouldn't that be a temporary measure? This is just socialist Democrats trying to build their pet projects again. And this is exactly what I was talking about with Joe Biden sitting out of the limelight. Because Bernie Sanders can show his true colors in a live stream. He can skip the vote, he can show his true colors, and that's all he can do is further alienate himself from a very large portion of the Democrat vote. And yet they're complaining about the fact that Joe Biden won't go out and make a public appearance. Biden is doing the perfect thing here. So, the last news piece that I have here before we get into things that restore my faith in humanity is one of the worst ones here. This is from Politico. DOJ seeks new emergency powers amid coronavirus pandemic. This is from Betsy Woodruff Swan. The Justice Department has quietly asked Congress for the ability to ask chief judges to detain people indefinitely without trial during emergencies, part of a new push for new powers that comes as the novel coronavirus spreads throughout the United States. Documents reviewed by Politico detail the department's request to lawmakers on a host of topics, including the statute of limitations, asylum, and the way court hearings are conducted. Politico also reviewed and previously reported on documents seeking the authority to extend deadlines on merger reviews and prosecutions. A Justice Department spokesperson declined to comment on the documents. So, we're in a position of emergency right now, and governments do tend to take power on something like this. So, this is not something I'm ready to discount immediately. This is absolutely something that can happen, but a publication like Politico I will take with a grain of salt as well, especially given as hard as they have railed against the president for the entire time they have been for the entire time he's been in office. And here's why. We see from the article that they're talking about documents without providing the documents. They're declining to comment on the documents when they're asked about them. And they can't produce the documents, but they can comment on them. So this is definitely something we need to pay attention to. This is definitely something that we need to watch and see if we see any signs of this, but we also need to take it with a grain of salt and not let ourselves be panicked. when things like this come up, especially from outlets that have been notoriously against people like William Barr and President Trump. So I'm going to call this a 50-50 shot that it's true because I can see the motivation of both sides at this point. So we need more documentation off of this. We need to pay more attention to this, and we do need to make sure that we don't give over our rights just for this feeling of security. Because that has been something we've been trying to be convinced of. I don't think that the DOJ currently would take them by force, especially given who's heading the DOJ, but I've been wrong before. So that's something we need to pay attention to. People who have power generally seek more power, but also keep in mind the fact that the news has been trying to turn this entire crisis against the president for as long as he's been in office, and as long as this crisis has been going on. So we're going to talk, and this actually leads directly into something that restores my faith in humanity. So on Monday, I look at some of the things that have happened around the world, and I talk about what restores my faith in humanity, because we all need a little bit of restoration. And this is generally from walking around, going to the store to get basic supplies. Obviously, like I said, I haven't been going out and doing shopping for myself or going out and buying stuff. For the most part, anything I needed for myself, I would get off Amazon anyway. But to go over to the local gas station, which has a tremendous food service program in it, to get eggs or bread or something like that, or get a soda out of the case, or to go over to the grocery store to go over and get stuff out of the, even to work in front of people and be able to discuss with people. Not necessarily discuss the COVID crisis, but to actually talk with the people and see what their general aura is about them. What restores my faith in humanity right now is that we've gotten bored with this crisis in our society. What I mean by that is there was a fear and a panic. Towards the end of last week, you could start to feel a little bit of the tension on edge. And even throughout the week, people have been rumoring about lockdowns and what we're going to do, what's going to happen with the markets, and where we're going to eat, how we're going to do things, etc. There's been a lot of argument about that. But the more you look at it now, people are getting bored with the story and they're trying to go about their lives. People don't want to live in a state of panic and fear all the time. And what I've been noticing as well is that the mainstreams are not having it. We see articles like the one that we saw from Politico. We see things from CNN. We see Pelosi going out and trying to sabotage the stimulus that was going to come out into our hands. We see things like all of this, and it does seem like both the government and the mainstream medias that are out there and relaying the information from the government, it seems like they are trying to give the people that heroin shot of panic again. So they start panicking. They glue themselves to the TV. And they sit there and they take all that bad news once again. And the American people are not having it at this point. They're looking at this and they're saying, yeah, you've told us to panic for years at this point. And for the most part, nothing bad has happened. Yes, we've had some problems here and there, but for the most part, nothing bad has happened. The American people and human beings in general are resilient. They know that they can build a society, that they can help themselves if they need to. We look at it in California, where people are surprised right now with the fact that they actually do have a 10-day waiting period in California to get a gun, and they can't get it shipped to their homes. That story warmed my heart, not because the people in California are taking it upon themselves. Well, let me rephrase that. Not for the political aspects, because the people are realizing that they're being lied to, and that it's going to affect the way that people vote come November, because they've been lied to. But it does warm my heart, the fact that the people are leaving the government behind and taking their self-defense into their own hands. The current government we have in place can sit down and collapse the society around us, and it does seem like they're doing a very, very good job of trying to do that. But we can rebuild a society from nothing. We've done it before. And that is what restores my faith in humanity. We will be back here today at 6:30 Central Time, where I will host Eric the Red from Rebel with a Cause podcast. So come over and check us out. Get in the live chat. We read the live chat during Ed's World, so we will answer your questions between topics. And of course, I will shout out everybody who talked in the live chat this today as well. So as soon as I'm off stream, I'm going to write your names down. I'm going to eat breakfast. I'm going to go get gas like I promised. And we will see you tonight for Ed's World. We will see you tomorrow for Contemporary, or we will see you tomorrow night for Ed's World Gaming. I look forward to seeing everybody here. I thank everybody for watching today. And for Contemporary, I am Jay Edgar.